Hello, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast. Woo! I'm Robin Grace, this is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
And today we're gonna talk about a couple interesting topics. Yours is definitely a scary topic. I'm more on the ish side of the topic.
That's kind of true. I will say, as I went through this and I found more stuff to add into my topic, I have some stuff that starts out at least not as scary. So I'm pretty excited. I'm going to be covering what I'm calling cyber wars. Robin, what are you going to be covering?
I'm going to be covering the Black Volga.
Never heard of it.
Neither had I.
No idea what that is. I think Volga. I can't remember. There's a dragon in Ocarina of Time I forget the name of in Death Mountain when you're the adult. Someone I'm sure out there will correct me on that.
Now all I'm thinking of is Bulgogi.
Wow. So we're all over the place with that. But yeah, pretty excited to get into this. I actually had this topic written down back in like September, and I decided to wait until after Extraterrestrial October. But some of the content felt a little bit serious, so I was like, maybe not a good topic for election week. Maybe we'll wait till the week afterwards. So yeah, I think it's a good time to do it. I think I'm going to go first.
Nice.
So it's going to go ahead and start. So this week, I decided I wanted to cover this particular topic because it's not only scary, which I do feel like it is, but it's very, very interesting. And the topic is definitely something that could be the first in the series of multiple topics, depending on how it goes. This is just going to cover things that have actually happened in the real world. It's nothing like fictional. It's no suppositions. It's no like doomsday apocalypse. I'm not going to talk about fucking Skynet.
Okay.
I don't even have any references to Terminator in this, so I'm kind of ashamed of myself.
So no Digimon, got it.
Digimon? They're a thing? Okay, I didn't know.
Shut up.
But yeah, it's definitely kind of a scary thing. And it's very different from the topics we normally cover. But that said, most of these things actually fit into true crime more than anything else. Because it's events that took place, and either they're war crimes or they're regular crimes.
But they happen over the internet.
They've happened over the internet. And at least some parts of this aren't as serious as others, but we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. So I present to you, dear listeners, Cyber Wars, which I kind of thought about getting a voice modulator, so it's like Cyber Wars.
You should do it!
Nah,
that'd be cool. No!
I think that voice right there was good enough, so let's just jump into it. So in some parts, I definitely feel like this fits. The Cyber Wars part, the name just feels right to me. The first one I'm actually going to cover is something that I was personally affected by, and some of you may have been as well. In fact, most of you that play video games were probably affected by this. And it's not exactly warfare, but it does have kind of a warfare feeling, and it was certainly pretty fucking annoying for me. And it honestly wasn't that long ago. This was back in 2014. I owned a device known as a PlayStation. And the thing about owning a PlayStation is you typically have an account with Sony Entertainment, who makes the PlayStation. And in 2014, that meant that your data got compromised when Sony Entertainment was hacked, which a lot of us know about. It's happened to Sony multiple times, but this one was different than the original ones where they just sort of went after credit card information.
Well, that 2014 one was the one where they were like, hey, here's a year of identity theft protection, right? Because
I don't know if I got that. Maybe. I got that from the Equifax leak when that happened like 2 years ago. For this one, though, it wasn't just email addresses and possibly credit card numbers that got leaked, although those were also leaked. They went into Sony's entire database and took everything that they had. So not just employees, but anyone who had ever given them a social security number, the private emails delivered between employees, and even unreleased films from Sony's Entertainment were accessed.
Wow.
In addition to that, the hackers, after doing this, wiped out half of the data that resided on the company's network, which is a serious and significant attack. So imagine just the biggest company that you can think of, and it loses half its data overnight, you know?
Imagine working on a game.
Intense.
Imagine spending years working on a game and they delete half of it.
Imagine having any big project you've ever worked on and then it's just gone. You know, you go into work one day, it's like it's deleted off the network. We can't find it anywhere. It's completely gone. Also, what's ever in your email, someone has now. So hopefully you didn't say anything that can get you in trouble. And that's kind of scary. My credit card information during that time was compromised, but I wasn't the only person affected. A lot of other people were. Millions of people were. One of the people that was affected differently than me, however, was the Sony Entertainment chairman, Amy Pascal, who had her personal email sent through her company account leaked. And when that happened, folks discovered racist conversations between her and other coworkers about then President Barack Obama.
Oh my gosh.
She also seemed to just hate Angelina Jolie and talked a bunch of shit about her in personal emails, who she's met multiple times face to face.
Oh my god.
Like, I have pictures of them together. And these personal emails just came out, and basically people were just like, this is unacceptable. So she was actually forced out of the company. The chairman of Sony Entertainment was forced out in the fallout from the leak. She didn't quit. She wasn't fired. Let me rephrase that. She wasn't fired. I think she wound up resigning because of the pressure that Sony gave her. Like, do you want the look that we fired you for this, or do you want to say that you're moving on to your next venture? And her next venture, she said she was so excited to pursue, was to become a producer. And I was just like, I don't know how that's going to work. You just talked a bunch of shit about people in Hollywood, and you talked a bunch of shit about the president, but hey, good luck to you. So that happened along with all the other shit that went down. It should also be noted that there were some high-profile individuals that had equally offensive emails leaked from this, but they were not fired or forced to resign. And the book on that, when they asked Amy or whoever else was in the circle that wound up getting fired, was they were just like too close to the executives. Were like, oh yeah, shit happens. So it's really fucked up to think that there was like a circle of trust where even though you got caught, they just let you stay with the company. So
because they have too much dirt on the other people?
Who knows? Like, seriously, it's up for speculation. But the funny thing is, the attention got drawn away from the fact that they were hacked. And it eventually came back to that because the FBI came forward after investigating this and identified the suspected culprit, North Korea. Which is crazy to think the country of North Korea and whatever cyber army they have, because they are referred to as cyber armies, would target Sony Entertainment. That shit's crazy. But it should be noted that North Korea was pissed at Sony Entertainment at the time for the impending release of the movie, The Interview, which was about interviewing Kim Jong-un at the time. I forget which one it was. But they did not...
in 2014?
Yeah, they did not want it released. Sony had actually canceled the theatrical release of the movie prior to this attack taking place. And they said they were still going to release it on streaming services. I think at one point it did come out on Netflix.
Yeah, it was on Netflix. I remember that.
And when this all came out, the then President Barack Obama said that there would be retaliation, essentially, for what had gone down. And then I remember, like, 2 weeks after this whole thing went down, like, the entire internet for North Korea went down for, like, a day.
What?
And they, of course, came back and they said, like, this is all from the West. This came from the USA. Because I remember when it happened, I was like, quick, everyone watch The Interview right now so that no one gets mad at us because they won't know. But yeah, this shit was kind of crazy in 2014, and I really didn't have any idea, like, the scale that it was. Like, the entire infrastructure for this company was hacked and compromised. And that's something we're going to see here in the next couple stories. So this next one is actually more like a cyber heist, which is kind of cool if you think about it.
Are you saying heist because you watched that Rick and Morty episode recently?
No, I'm saying that because this is actually what it's referred to online as.
Shut up. There's a cyber heist?
A heist is when you steal a lot of money, basically, or something of, like, incredible value. It's not just petty theft, you know, it's a heist.
Is this like Ocean's 11 type stuff?
Let me get into it. So if this was the theatrical version of the story, some really crappy, upbeat, techno-popish music would be playing as we assembled a crew.
Okay.
And feel free to pretend that that's what's happening right now and you're the next member of the crew being recruited. And there's only one phrase that you need to know for that situation, and I think Robin knows what it is.
You son of a bitch, I'm in.
There you go. Perfect. In my notes here, I put Robin better fucking say it. So, in this case, the cyber heist involves something known as Bitcoin.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Gotcha.
Some of you may be asking, what is Bitcoin? Well, no one really knows. Scientists have yet to determine what Bitcoin really is. Just kidding. Someone does. It's what's known as a cryptocurrency. Now, cryptocurrency, when it first arrived, was predicted for quite some time to basically just disappear due to its fairly confusing nature and, like, quasi-tangible form. No one could even say what it is. It's not something you can physically hold on to.
Yeah, it's very strange.
So let me explain it in the dumbest of senses because it's me that's explaining it. So, without getting too balls deep in the technical side of things, it's a digital asset. So imagine looking at your bank account and you see numbers in your bank account, you know? That's not something you're physically holding in your hand, but those numbers represent something. And if it's on the right computer screen, you can actually withdraw that money, you know? Something very similar. It's not exactly a bank account, but it's like a digital asset. And I think when you hear that, maybe you can start piecing that together a little bit better. Like, think cyber gold instead of like a cyber dollar. You know what I mean? It actually tracks its current and previous owner, kind of like a car title, but it belongs to whoever's holding it at the time. So more like a bearer bond.
My question is always, how is the value determined? Because it's not connected to something like gold, like our currency is.
That's why people don't like it, is because it's decentralized. And essentially what it comes down to is the more complex cryptocurrencies have become, the more valuable they are. And so the market kind of determines on its own how much one Bitcoin is worth. And it's very odd, and the values change very quickly here. So stick with me, but just think a Bitcoin is actually just a coin that you get to hold, you know? Mm-hmm. But it's digital. So think like Ready Player One, where you can make like items disappear and go back and forth. So that's what a Bitcoin is, plain and simple. So how are they created? That's even harder to explain. But essentially they're built digitally so that they can have this ridiculous amount of cryptology built directly into it. So they're very, very secure and they're very unique. So it's like they each have their own signature, or like they each have their own like social security number almost.
I've heard of people mining Bitcoin, and I've just never understood what that meant.
So if you had a PC powerful enough to basically build out the algorithms and all the logs that you'd have to put into what is essentially like a little program of itself, which would take forever, you could make a Bitcoin. It's like you could mint your own Bitcoin, which was very difficult to do, and it took a long time, which is why back, and this is just me being a nerd, back in like 2013, people were buying up all the video cards out there because they have the RAM necessary to process Bitcoins, and they were mining Bitcoins in the hope that by building a few of them over the course of months and months and months, they would accumulate value as time went on, which you can't really do now because they're so complex. You'd have to have like an army of computers because people started to realize it's just totally worth it to invest into computers to just sit there and build cryptocurrency like all day.
One Bitcoin's like $2,000 now or something.
Well, let me get into it.
Oh,
so,
God.
This shit's kind of crazy. These numbers are like, they blew my fucking mind when I was reading them. So if you really want to know how cryptocurrency is made, specifically Bitcoin, I recommend Googling it and trying to wrap your mind around it. The best way I can say it to you is when two humans are in love, they have sex with a stork on top of a computer, and out comes a Bitcoin. So really, the answer keeps changing as time goes on. So depending on when you're listening to this, it could be completely different from right now. But it's a secure form of currency that's fairly easily transferable. And maybe only half of that was true at the time, because back in 2013, some folks decided that if Bitcoin was worth money, they were going to steal it. Anything that has a value can apparently be stolen. Now, because cryptocurrency was basically bullshit to a lot of people, like the New York Stock Exchange was not doing transfers of cryptocurrency. There's like, we're not going to do that. But there were places that processed transactions of Bitcoins and using Bitcoins. And one such place was known as Mt. Gox, which was located in Shibuya, Japan. So in 2013, Mt. Gox was handling 70% of all Bitcoin transactions worldwide. So this is the epicenter of Bitcoin, really. Shibuya, Japan. So you enter Ocean's 11 or whoever the fuck it is that did this. Side note, it's still completely unknown who did this. And the prime suspect was completely exonerated in court. So they can't be the person. And if they were, it's the perfect crime because they completely got away with it. But the numbers are skewed here depending on where you find this information. But I found 4 separate sources on this, okay, that had independent information sources. They weren't all quoting the same website. That confirmed the following. Over the course of several months in 2013, and possibly even the first month in 2014, Bitcoins were being systematically taken from their proper accounts and transferred to an undisclosed and undiscovered location.
Undiscovered?
So whoever was doing this was smart enough to cover their tracks, but they were basically skimming to avoid being caught. They were taking small amounts. The Bitcoins, and again, think digital bearer bonds, despite being taken, held their value. So whoever took them can cash them in, basically. It belongs to them now. And interestingly enough, the value of Bitcoin in 2013 would increase, especially by the end of November of 2013. So the value at the beginning of the year for one Bitcoin was $13.50, okay? Mm-hmm. By November of 2013, the value was $1,075.
in between, somewhere in between, like, I want to say, well, I met you 2013.
Correct.
So
February 3rd of 2013, greatest day of my life.
Yeah, so sometime around in 2013, one of my coworkers was like, guys, I'm going to take my check. I'm going to take this $200 and buy a Bitcoin, one Bitcoin, $200. And I was like, that's fucking dumb. You're a fucking idiot. Why would you do that? That's stupid.
Just wait until I tell you how much Bitcoin is worth now.
Fuck. Oh my God. And now that it's 2020 and Bitcoin is worth ridiculous amounts of money, I'm just shooting myself in the foot because I was like, why didn't I do that with a paycheck? You know what I mean?
Just imagine.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, let me get to the numbers here.
Okay.
So November hits, everyone's like, fuck yeah, Bitcoin, $1,000.75. If you spent the time to build out 1 or 2 Bitcoins with your PC or whatever, that's like $1,000 or $2,000 in the bank. Like, that's awesome. Business was a booming. And then someone took notice and said, instead of skimming, we're going to go for the big score. By February, internal estimates said that the amount of Bitcoin that had been quote unquote heisted was around 744,408 Bitcoins. Not dollars.
Oh my
Bitcoins.
God.
So before you bust out your calculator, at that time, what was stolen was roughly $800 million.
Oh my God.
$800 million was taken. No one knows where the fuck it went to this day. Mt. Gox, the exchange network that was used, went bankrupt within months due to losing all of this. And people who had their money stolen were just shit out of luck. Mostly retirement and savings and college funds had been siphoned off. But some folks looking to get on the first wave of Bitcoin that had a lot of money to invest, they got effed right in the A. So rich people that were like, they had the foresight to know Bitcoin was going to be a thing and cryptocurrency was real.
Yeah.
They got fucked hard. In fact, Bitcoin itself was basically declared dead by like March of 2014 because of what happened when Mt. Gox went bankrupt. Like the entire financial industry that had been worried about this decentralized currency existing was like, oh yeah, it's gone. It's gone forever. It's not exactly what happened. Bitcoin did eventually recover. What is hilarious about this whole thing is that the source article most websites do reference that was starting to bug me came from 2016 because I was like, those numbers aren't fucking right. So here's some updated values, okay? Current value today, November 10th, 2020, a single Bitcoin
Oh, this is going to be painful. Okay,
is
go.
worth $15,290.60.
I have coworkers that have Bitcoin.
They have some fucking money.
I have friends who have Bitcoin, and they sell Bitcoin in fractions. You can buy fractions of Bitcoin. And one of my old coworkers,
it's like an old gold coin where you would bite a piece off and pay with it.
One of my old coworkers, literally every day, maybe not every day, but every paycheck would buy a little bit more and a little bit more. So every time he had a little post-it note, and he had like 0.2 something da 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 da, and each paycheck he would add another decimal or something like that somewhere, or change a decimal somewhere. I'm like, oh my God, that is insane.
So the value has certainly recovered at this point.
Oh my God.
Which means that if the person who stole this money still has all those Bitcoins sitting around, the value now sits at $11.38 billion, which is fucking nuts. Quick Bitcoin side note. If anyone's ever heard of the site called Facebook or has ever seen the movie Social Network, the Winklevoss twins, the two brothers who sued Mark Zuckerberg for Facebook saying that they were the ones that came up with it, they had an initial investment in Bitcoin of $11 million back in 2013. They were not part of the people who were affected and had their money stolen
Wow.
through Mt. Gox. Their worth for their investment is now $1.4 billion.
You can
Must be fucking nice.
I noticed that Bitcoin was gonna be a huge, huge, huge thing when Microsoft, you could go to the Microsoft store and pay in Bitcoin.
Yep.
And I was just mind blown that it was legitimate currency. It's like PayPal, you know what I mean? Everywhere.
It was like the forefront of technology
Oh my God.
mixed with economics, which are two things people absolutely don't understand. And people that were economists or economists or whatever the fuck they're called were just like, I don't understand this. And even tech people were like, I don't understand how this would work. But people who could see both sides of that were like, fuck yeah, I'm in. Side note on this, which I find super interesting because I was like, oh wow, like the Winklevosses won. They are worth like $1.4 billion now, plus whatever their dad's worth was because their dads were super rich. So I was like, what's Zuckerberg worth now? So I checked Zuckerberg's net worth, 107.7 billion with a B dollary dues. Holy fucking shit. This money, this amount of money is unfathomable. That dude could literally give me less than 1% of what he's worth. And it would be like, I would have more money than I could spend in my entire life, or my kids or my entire family could spend.
Yep.
The fact that someone owns that much money is batshit crazy. So.
Unholy.
This isn't scary. It is a little bit depressing knowing I'll never have that sort of money. But
I was going to say, we just have a whole episode talking about this stuff where I'm just like, what? No way.
All right. So next up is actually a series of what I'm calling cyber battles. They're not necessarily a cyber war because it's kind of all over the fucking place. That they all sort of feed into one another. So this next part, this third part, is the final part. But they all kind of coexist. So there's different pieces to this. So instead of breaking it apart, I'm just going to let them flow together. So back in the long, long ago of 2008, something rather odd happened.
I just graduated high school. I was going, oh, no. I think I just finished my first semester of college, and then I went to go work at Borders.
I think I was just going back to, I was planning to go back, in 2008, I was planning to go back to school. And I started my next semester because I took like a year and a half off to work. I was an IRA administrator at a credit union, helping people like take care of their money and stuff like that during the financial crash. So I saw a lot of crazy shit happen in the financial industry at 22 or 23 years old. And I was like, yep, I'm going back to school. Fuck this. So 2008 was definitely crazy time. The U.S. military had a bit of an issue back in 2008 that would go on to change the foreseeable future for a lot of different nations. So those real fancy spy folk all over there, along with the U.S. military, they have their own, it's basically their own internet, to call it that.
Really?
And that entire device, or whatever you would call it, is what's known as quote-unquote air-gapped, which means it's cut off from the normal internet or external sources. It's like a home network that no one can fucking access, you know? You have to be at a workstation to access it. There's no external access to this. And they share a lot of sensitive data, like super top secret sensitive data. So what happens here is, despite being standalone, secure networks are still vulnerable to those little hard drive penises known as USB flash drives. And their defenses were penetrated when one such flash drive that was infected deliberately with a worm known as agent.btz was connected to a device from within the network. And it spread throughout the U.S. military's network, gathering information presumably to be sent back to whoever had arranged for it to be planted there in the first place. The thing that helped was the fact that the network was standalone, and it never had the opportunity to upload its information. It took the U.S. military 14 months to eradicate the worm entirely from their system. They're still unsure, or maybe they're sure and they just don't want to tell us, of what information had been gathered. Someone also made the rule from then on, no flash drives.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, we don't use flash drives. We don't even use CDs as much as possible. Like, no one really has CD drives at work anymore. You're not allowed to plug cables, anything, into your computer, even if it's to charge your phone. You can't do it.
That's how it was at the bank I was working at. Just before I got this newest job, it was like if they caught you on camera plugging anything into a USB drive, like, you were fired. They would tell you, like, we can fire you instantly for doing any of that shit. It has to be an approved device, and our IT department has to plug it in.
Yep.
And there was a day where we went in, and the entire system was down. And they're like, yep, something's really wrong. Someone did something that compromised the building, and now not only are all the computers offline and the phones are offline, the power's going out to the building as well. So they wound up bringing the entire building down, putting us on backup generator, so that basically we would be a secure system again to whatever happened. And like half the people lost their hard drives. So it's something that like I've seen before. So this happened to the U.S. military. It took them 14 months to get this shit fixed, which is a little bit nuts. And because of this, it winds up leading to the creation of what is now known as the U.S. Cyber Command, which essentially brings all military cyber operations under one umbrella, which is a good thing because the next part of this story definitely benefited from that organization of efforts. It's really interesting, too. The next part has a piece that actually predates this worm attack in 2008. So in 2006, the then president of the United States, which was George W. Bush, authorized the development of a cyber weapon to be created to address a very specific worry: Iran developing nuclear weapons. So, if you don't remember what's happening in 2006 in the United States and all over the world, the U.S. was involved in 2 wars, one in Afghanistan, one in Iraq. And so they decided that this new thing that was coming up, despite the fact that it was being developed, and they weren't 100% sure of the progress being made, they didn't want to deal with it the way we had dealt with the other 2 situations. They decided to go the cyber route, you know? So when President Obama took over in 2009, January 20th, 2009 was the inauguration day for President Obama, there's this thing that happens called transition, where the outgoing president helps the incoming president realize all the things that are currently in place that probably need to carry over into the next administration, despite party and all that other stuff. And that happened. It happened very well. The program was carried over with the new administration. And while I'm unable to confirm an exact date because I'm pretty sure it's classified, what winds up happening is this cyber weapon is finished and deployed around November of 2010. The weapon would be yet another worm, and this time it was named Stuxnet, Stuxnet, and its target was a nuclear enrichment facility in Iran.
Jeebus.
So, once it got into the system, here's what would happen. It would lay dormant for 13 days. So it would basically spread but not do anything. After that, it would activate itself, and what it would do is target the centrifuges that had the nuclear material which are essential to developing nuclear weapons, and speed them up and slow them down. So imagine getting into a car and just slamming on the gas as fast as you could, and then slamming on the fucking brakes and pulling the e-brake and doing that over and over and over and over with a bunch of sensitive material in the car. And it would essentially have all these centrifuges and all the samples within them destroy themselves.
Yeah.
So, sabotage at its finest. And apparently, it worked. According to everything I can find, it 100% worked. What is known is that it worked way too well. Because like most worms, it was self-replicating to ensure that its purpose would be carried out. But the thing that sucked is that this place was not air-gapped.
Oh, no.
So, while this purpose of the worm is to ensure maximum level of infection across multiple devices,
it went up to the internet.
It went world fucking wide.
Oh, no.
It went everywhere. Obviously, like, the programming doesn't do anything if you don't have a centrifuge attached to whatever program that's very specifically built. But it had 4 additional exploits, and they're called zero-day exploits, which means from the time the worm is activated, you have X amount of days to address it before it's irreversible. So something that would like wipe your hard drive out, you know? And it has 4 zero-day exploits, which means 4 other things would happen that you can't prevent, basically. If you got rid of the worm before it activated, you're fine. If it activates, you're fucked. And aside from causing centrifuges to spin, these other elements were noticed all over the world. Again, can't confirm exactly what they were. I'm pretty sure in 2010, there was that worm that went around that had everyone's fucking hard drives spinning up and burning out their fucking computers.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
So the entire idea was that the worm would keep itself from being discovered so that the facility would assume something had gone wrong with their equipment or blame their workers. Say, like, what the hell did you guys do? That didn't happen because when the worm got out, everyone kind of knew. The power plant in question announced on November 23rd, 2010, very publicly, that their systems had not actually been affected, but they had suffered a cyber attack. And it's believed at this point that the announcement was to sort of save face, and all of their centrifuges had actually been destroyed according to U.S. intelligence. It also gave them the opportunity to state publicly that the West had been responsible for cyber sabotage and essentially the start of a cyber war. And what's craziest about this whole thing is they made a documentary on this particular attack called 0 Days, and how the thing just ran absolutely wild and had all these unintended
consequences,
repercussions, which is the next and final part. So here's the thing. If you get hit by a cyber attack, the first order of business after that is to increase your defense against cyber attack. And almost immediately, Iran started investing in a cyber division of their own. And in August of 2012, they decided to get involved in the quote-unquote cyber wars. They went after Saudi Aramco. Don't know if I'm saying that right.
Is that the gas company or like oil company?
It's the oil company in Saudi Arabia that's actually owned by their government. So how do they do it? Another worm? No, this is no bullshit exactly how they did it. They sent basically a spam email to every employee in the company that had a phishing link on it.
I am a prince. Please give me money.
All it took was one person to click it, and 35,000 computers at Saudi Aramco had their hard drives wiped,
Oh my God.
and in most cases overheated and were destroyed.
Wow.
The entire network. So they were sent back to like typewriters and paper applications for all the business that they had to do. There were apparently other effects that have not been publicly disclosed as to what happened, but essentially Iran completely sabotaged the government-owned oil company in Saudi Arabia. In addition to that, the same group was responsible for the hack of a dam in upstate New York in 2013. I totally remember when that happened.
Really?
So they didn't sabotage any systems or divert power or cause any damage, but people noticed that something was going on, and U.S. cyber intelligence was able to determine that the dam itself had been accessed by a foreign entity that they identified as the exact same group from Iran that had done what they did to the oil company in Saudi Arabia. It's thought that it was an exercise to see if they could do it. You know, pick a random dam in the United States and see if you can get in and get out undetected.
So that's infrastructure. That's a big deal.
They got into the U.S. infrastructure, but they were not undetected. The NSA was quoted as saying, quote, Iran has demonstrated a clear ability to learn from the capabilities and actions of others. The NSA didn't say that out loud. That's actually a quote from leaked documents about this particular incident.
Wow.
So that was not even meant to be shared with the public, where they're saying, yeah, they figured out what happened and now they're fighting back, basically. So what this topic all sort of boils down to, because that is where I'm going to stop on this one, because lots of cyber attacks have happened, and this only really brings us up to like 2013, 2014. What this all really comes down to is that there are people out there who are brilliant and technologically savvy who can really fuck up your day, or your place of work, or even the infrastructure of where you live. Who knows? It's scary, and it sucks. So when you read stuff about this, it's equal parts fascinating and terrifying. That's right up the alley of like true crime, so to speak, because it's like equal parts horrifying and interesting. Hopefully there are some benevolent hackers out there, probably like Hugh Jackman drinking wine, dancing in front of like 10 computer screens like in Project Swordfish, or maybe Angelina Jolie and Dade Murphy screaming hack the planet like the movie Hackers. The movie Hackers, by the way, totally underrated. Everyone should go watch it. It doesn't make any sense at this point now that we know how technology works, but it's still really fun to watch. But considering all the shit that happened here, except for Sony, happened without me knowing about it, I hope that these people, these counter cyber terrorists, are good enough to prevent anything serious in the future. And we all just go on blissfully not knowing, and then maybe there's a topic in 5, 6, 7 years where I can say like, did you guys know that this happened behind closed doors?
That would be cool.
So we'll see how that plays out. But this was Cyber Wars.
Nice. It's terrifying.
It is.
I'm very paranoid about like credit card data and login data and stuff like that. I'm always afraid of identity theft, you know?
There's just so many attempts nowadays to like hack into people's stuff or defraud people using technology, like the phone calls telling you you're being sued by the IRS. Then you call them back and it's someone telling you have to go get like a gift card for $10,000 from Target or Walmart and read them the code over the phone.
The IRS is never going to ask you for a Target gift card.
Or like the emails that you get to your account telling you like, oh, your account's been hacked and we've taken all your personal information and we're holding it ransom.
Oh, man, I hate the emails that are like, I watched you jerk off.
Oh yeah, we took a video of you doing terrible things. Every time I get that email, I reply back to them like, release the tapes. Like, I don't believe you at all. And if you do that, I don't give a shit. Like, it doesn't affect me at all. I never get emails back. But it's just kind of creepy knowing how many things are out there and how many people could probably access your shit if they really want to. But if you think about it, it's the same as having a thief. You know, a thief in your neighborhood or in your city or wherever you live. Like, if they want in, they're probably going to get in. But they're probably not going to target you. There's so many people, you're basically a needle in a haystack. So, unless you have like the codes or something like that and people are looking out, and then you probably have more security than you even know what to do with. So, fingers crossed, none of us have to worry about that shit ever.
Yeah.
I will say, if you've ever been the victim of some sort of weird, bizarre cyber attack, maybe send an email to storytime@scaryish.com and let us know about it. I know I've heard some crazy fucking stories I've heard one story from someone at Credit One Bank when I was still working there that I am absolutely not allowed to share because it was super sensitive information, but it was like, they basically thought they were about to get fired for not knowing what they did. And it's kind of crazy because sometimes, you hold the door for a person, you know, because you think they
Yeah.
they have their own badge, they have all that stuff, and they are legitimately someone who's trying to break in and hack your shit. So that shit happens in like upper echelon style businesses, but
At work, they always email us. They send us those fake phishing emails all the time, and they there's that little option they give you at the top, like click if it's a phishing alert or whatever. And I just literally any email that I'm like, this isn't from my boss, I'm just like phishing. And sometimes I get an email back from security like, this email's fine. Just
hey, better safe than sorry.
yeah, it's like, I'm better safe than sorry. But I swear, I feel like I just spam her inbox with like phishing.
All I'm saying is that's like locking your doors when you leave your house, you know? It's like if you leave your doors open, someone could come in if they want. If you lock your doors and someone's like, I'm just going to walk into that person's house. Oh, it's locked. I'm going to fuck off now. That's like reporting phishing emails that aren't phishing as opposed to not reporting any of them. So right on. Kind of scary stuff. Let us know if you have any stories about that. But all right, that's the end of mine. Before we move into the next one, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Starting with me talking yet again about Manscaped. You can go to manscaped.com right now. Check out their products. If you see anything you like, you can get 20% off by using code Scaryish, all caps, at checkout. And you also get free shipping, which is pretty freaking sweet.
Yes, and it's the perfect time right now. I know Black Friday's coming up, but it's a perfect time to get all your Christmas presents all lined up and everything. So head on over.
I highly recommend the Lawnmower 3.0. It's a trimmer for sensitive skin. I use it all the time. I had it used on my face during a live show the other day.
Go ahead and go back and watch the live show from last week. And
had a hunk of my beard taken out like it was nothing, so I have shaved down to a goatee. They are very, very effective. They are really good at handling sensitive skin, too.
And they're wireless. I think that's my favorite part about it, is that I don't have to have a wire dragging around the bathroom, you know?
I agree. And they charge really quick. So go check it out. They have a bunch of other stuff. But check out manscaped.com. See if there's anything you would like or anything that you could get for someone, because 20% off is a lot. So one more time, Scaryish, all caps, at checkout for 20% off and free shipping. And I guess now we'll move into the other ads.
Thanks for sticking through the ads.
Welcome back.
All right, so I figured I'd cover something a little bit more on the ish side of Scaryish this week to kind of balance out Adam's pretty scary topic, at least for me, because cyber attacks, hacking, identity theft, that's something that really, 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 really bothers me. But I'm going to cover some haunted, not so scary stuff. And the thing that I'm going to cover is the urban legend of the Black Volga. And I thought it was really interesting once I saw what the car is said to have looked like.
It's a car?
It's a car. So the Black Volga is a car.
Is it? Okay. I like this. So it's like Christine almost.
It's a phantom car, yeah.
It's a phantom car, not an actual car that's said to be haunted, like James Dean's car.
Yeah, it's like a phantom car that appears out of nowhere kind of thing.
So like it's an updated Headless Horseman's horse.
Sure.
Nice.
I've never seen Christine, so I don't know what that's about, or read Christine. I just know it's an evil car or something, right?
It's like Cujo, but with a car instead of a
Cujo.
dog.
Oh god, okay. So
those are both Stephen King books, by the way.
Now, there are a number of models of this car, but we'll post pictures of the car and stuff like that on Instagram and Facebook later, so you folks can check it out. You'll probably see pictures from Adam's topic as well. I don't know. You're gonna
it's gonna be 4 screenshots of Matrix code.
I was gonna say that, because how are you gonna take a picture of Bitcoin? Okay.
I just found out that the Matrix code was designed, and when they were putting in the letters, it's actually recipes for sushi.
I believe it.
Yeah, they were like trying to find something that had like an anime look to it, and they started going through like a bunch of different cookbooks, and they're like, this is perfect.
So let me tell you a little bit about this car first, and then I'll tell you about what it totally made me think of when I was going through it and reading about it and seeing the car and everything. All right. So this urban legend is pretty widespread throughout Poland, Hungary, Russia, Ukraine, and even Mongolia, which I thought was really interesting. It was spread more so in the 1960s and 70s, not so much today, probably because most people these days have no idea what a Volga is, obviously, because you were like, what? It's a car? Yeah, I had no idea what it was either until I came upon this little ditty. This little V ditty.
Oh, wow. I hate you so much. I was going to say, I thought a ditty was supposed to be a song, but if it's a V ditty, I guess I can't say
like
anything.
P Diddy. I don't know. Okay, so.
P. Diddy listens to this show, and I'm pretty sure he just turned it off.
No, turn it back on, brah. Well, he can't hear me say that if he just turned it off. Anyway, so this legend is about a black Volga. Whether this model is a GAZ-21 or a GAZ-24 is up for interpretation, I guess. Supposedly, these were the fastest cars in Europe during that time. This car is supposedly the source of abductions. So both adults and children, but especially children, would be abducted by this car.
It reminds me of Nosferatu a little bit.
Dang it, babe! I'm saving that for the end.
Sorry. That's Stephen King's son who wrote that one.
God. So this car... Shit. No, you ruined it. The versions of this story have the car appear out of nowhere. So like I said, phantom car. And it's said to be driven by a menagerie of people. Different tales have different drivers. They range from priests and nuns to communist secret police, Russian mafia, vampires, and even Satan himself. Interesting. The original story had it that if you saw the car, you would either be killed on the spot, kidnapped or killed, or would die within 24 hours of seeing the car.
A harbinger.
Then the car just vanishes around the corner. Iterations even have it where there really was no driver at all. I think driverless cars kind of freak me out.
Like Teslas?
Well, I definitely don't trust those. The biggest call out for me for this whole thing is the reports of children and families that just go missing after a black Volga is spotted. So
it definitely has that secret police feel to it.
Yes, and it's really scary. So as this story spread throughout Russia and the surrounding area, it's understandable that people would add the idea of like communist secret police or Russian mafia, and living during that time, you know, spreading in the 60s, 70s, they're dealing with a whole lot of stuff. And those are probably two of the biggest things that they're dealing with because it's a bunch of oppression for them. Maybe the story originated one way and people kind of added more details to it.
It's like based off of region, maybe they're seeing someone different behind the wheel of the car.
Exactly. And though during the years of repression that they were dealing with in the area, the M1 version of this car was made an actively used car by the NKVD, or the People's Commissariat for Internal Affairs. So this was like the interior ministry for the Soviet Union.
Oh shit. Okay. So this is a car to be feared at this point. Then.
Yes. So people see this car and it's like bad things happen because the bad, like the communists and stuff are using it, right?
It's a more amped up version of when I'm 16 and I memorize what the headlights looked like on Crown Vics.
Really?
Yeah. Cause I like the Crown Vics have a very distinct like headlight pattern, and then their turning signals have like this dotted pattern in it. And they're like these perfect rectangles. And if I saw those lights behind me, I'm like, I am getting fucking pulled over right now. So I got real used to identifying those lights at night.
Yeah, these cars are like luxury vehicles. They're not just an everyday car. They're like fancy ass cars, supposedly. Never been in one. They look fancy though in pictures. So during this Cold War era, for economic reasons, almost all of them were painted black. This car is also said to have white wheel rims, and I don't know if
white walls.
Yeah, like the white walls around them. And white curtains, or just other little bits and pieces of white accents on the car.
I want to say what it reminds me of, but I don't want to get yelled at again.
I know! And we'll go over that, and I'm glad that you remember that, because it's just such a big... that when I read about this, I was like, that's what that's based off of. Okay, so... it definitely plays into the idea that this thing is just big and scary. Like, these big wigs are using it. You're being forced to stay in your house and you're dealing with all this, like, one little thing you do wrong and whatever, you know?
But they have these fancy ass cars that have, like, curtains like a fucking carriage would.
Yeah. Just imagine living in this era where you're afraid of everything, and then those in charge are driving around in these big, black, ominous cars. There's bound to be legends that people tell around their hearth while they're stuck inside, you know? It definitely makes sense to me. And now that I think about it, I always wonder, like, is this when people start creating legends and stuff like that? Maybe during quarantine, someone was like, dude, I'm going to write all these creepypasta. I'm going to make this urban legend.
It's like during time of, like, heightened stress and fear and things like that, people channel that. And it's not even necessarily you're deliberately channeling it, but certain things crop up. If you've ever seen The Strain on FX, I think that's a really good example of like how when horrible things happen in humanity, it attracts great evil.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think of the evil things. Are you talking about like evil stories or like more people come out of the woodwork being all creepy?
Because there's so much going on there that's just terrible, and these people are all living in fear. That it's like, if there is some sort of phantom car that drives around taking people, it would like be right at home in that sort of environment.
All right, that makes sense. Anyway, there's definitely, this is a topic that some graduate student's going to totally have to write a paper on, you know? You're welcome for that idea if you're going to write a paper on, like, what happens during, you know, quarantine, pandemic, war times where you're trapped and whatever.
One of, like, my final things I wrote for history was, like, the U.S. and USSR diplomatic relationship between, like, 1955 and 1959.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was just like, oh my god, this is such a specific time period, and I had to go through all those years and find out everything that happened. It was so hard.
Sounds hard.
It was still a really good paper, though.
I hate writing essays, so...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So apparently there was a real entity, I guess, that inspired these stories. A real person, like a supposed origin, I guess, of this particular legend. Not necessarily the official one, but something that definitely happened that could be an inspiration during this time period. So the head of the NKVD, the Soviet Union Internal Ministry, Lavrentiy Beria, who looks absolutely creepy, by the way. We'll post pictures again on our Instagram and Facebook. But the head of this ministry was supposedly a sexual predator. It's said that on warm nights during the Cold War, Beria was often seen driving slowly through the streets, or being driven by a driver slowly through the streets of Moscow in his armored limousine. And he would point out young women to be detained and escorted to his mansion. And
that's super fucking creepy.
Yes.
Like, that's just such a scumbag.
And by young women, it's like teenagers too. He would he's an awful person. Okay. And it's definitely sounds like a predator if I've ever heard one. Like, it's just awful. And Simon Sebag Montefiore, a British historian, concluded that he was, quote, a sexual predator who used his power to indulge himself in obsessive depravity, end quote. This guy was just a POS. And any women that turned away his advances, he would arrest. He would get arrested. It was just a big old power trip. Even those that wanted to exchange sex for favors got arrested. So he'd sleep with them and then arrest them or lie to them. Like, there was a woman who wanted to exchange that for her freedom and her family's freedom. This guy already knew that her family had been executed.
Wow.
And so just arrested her afterwards.
That's so fucked up, dude.
Yeah, this guy was awful. I know none of this necessarily is like part of that legend, but he definitely did all these things, and he admitted that he did these things in his trial in 1953. So he was tried for what he did. And it's kind of weird how these topics kind of go, because I know we cover a whole bunch of different things, and sometimes you start researching something that's just about a haunted place or this weird incident that happened, and then you get into, like you were saying, things become true crime.
Right.
And in this case, war crimes. Maybe not war crimes, but definitely messed up crimes during a wartime. He was definitely tried for a lot of horrible things that he did. What's even worse, it's suggested that Beria actually murdered a number of the women that he had taken. So sometimes they would kidnap these people and they would take them for questioning or whatever, and they would never show up ever again. A slew of skeletal remains were discovered in the garden of his Moscow villa, which is now the Tunisian embassy. This was discovered in the 1990s, so it wasn't till way later.
It's like, sorry, Tunisia, you're gonna get the haunted place with all the skeletal remains.
He was, though, eventually executed for his crimes.
That's wonderful to hear.
Because he did a whole bunch of things. And apparently he groveled before they shot him, too. Which, I'm sure happened a lot during wartime. Legends of this child kidnapping car involved them, some had them having their blood used, like they would drain the kids for their blood use to cure rich Westerners or for organ harvesting purposes. apparently there are legends that the KGB used to go around stealing organs. So there's no surprise there that they would add that into a legend.
Mix that fear from that particular organization with this phantom car.
Yes. Some thought it was a serial killer that drove the car around just murdering people, or like a child slavery ring. There's also the occult aspect, as with many legends and stories that get told. Versions have cultists driving around trying to pick up children for blood rituals or satanic rituals. Some believe this car had a more demonic aspect to it, which is where the Satan driving it comes in. Or like a high level demon, I guess. It could be anybody.
I always do say, like, don't you think Satan's a little bit busy to always be possessing everyone?
Right. Some thought that these demons would use this car in this way to capture souls. And according to the interwebs, newer versions of this legend have been kind of making its rounds, though instead of a Volga, it's like a BMW or a Mercedes, another super fancy car, which makes sense since so many of those BMWs or Mercedes portrayed in movies and things like that for royalty and people with buttloads of money are usually black. These modern depictions have the car maybe having horns instead of side mirrors. Some stories have the car red instead of black. Maybe even a license plate with the number 666 on it. The more modern iterations have the driver ask innocent passersby what time it is. And then when the person comes closer to the car to tell them what time it is, they kill them. Others have that these people die later in the day after the interaction with whoever's in the car. Supposedly, if you come across this vehicle and the driver asks you, what time is it? You are supposed to answer, it is God's time. And then
I'm going to say that to everyone who asks me what time it is from now on, just to be safe.
And then the car will speed off and away from you. This is also the answer if it were a demon too, obviously. And, I guess just say it, like Adam's saying, just say it to anybody. Anybody that asks you the time, I guess, in a suspicious looking car.
Anytime a car pulls up, rolls down the window and asks me what time it is, I say it's God's time. Just like if I walk around and I see anyone that has like the visage of what could be the slit-mouthed woman, I just throw rice in their face and run away. I'm just a cautious person.
Yeah, or I mean, what it comes down to is you could just not approach any suspicious looking vehicles.
But it says free candy. I love candy.
So this legend totally reminds me of the show, like Adam said, Nosferatu. Because it's the show with Zachary Quinto where he's like an evil Christmas vampire-esque villain type dude. And if you haven't watched it, there's going to be spoilers coming because I really enjoy this show and you folks should watch it if you're into weird Stephen King-ish type stuff. Because it's funny, it kind of connects the whole Stephen King universe.
It's called The Kingdom.
The Kingdom. So Zachary Quinto's character drives a very, very similar black, old school vintage looking car. Looks similar to the M1 version of the car. Well, you can look at pictures later. Though in the show, it's actually a Rolls-Royce Wraith. He goes around abducting children in this car to stay young. And this legend totally reminded me of it because he's just this old, creepy looking driver that goes around and tempts these kids with Christmas and presents and you know, stuff like that.
And the longer the kids stay in the car,
the
younger he becomes.
The
right?
younger he becomes, and the kids kind of start to shrivel up, and what's actually happening is, well, I can't tell you guys that because that'd be super spoiler, but you should.
I'm just trying to get into the generalities that you could see in the trailer, basically,
yes.
without going into the fine details.
Yeah, so it's definitely something you folks should watch. This legend totally reminded me of that show. I don't know if that show took inspiration, or like the writer took inspiration from it. But yeah, I just thought it was so interesting because it was such a weird parallel where this car literally grabs kids in. And this whole phantom car here did the same thing.
Spoilers for one part, and you don't really need to skip ahead on this. If a car is ever chasing you,
you don't run in a straight line. You run in a serpentine pattern, and you take a lot of 90-degree turns.
I know what scene you're talking
So
about.
I'm watching shows where this shit happens. I'm like, you should die. This is on you. You're fucking dumb. How do you not just turn left? Like, go stand on that pole. The car's not going to run into the pole, is it? I don't know. There's certain things in certain shows that just pissed me off. Like Rickon, really? Serpentine pattern.
Oh my
moron.
God, Rickon.
Jesus.
Oh, poor Rickon. Okay. That's a Game of Thrones reference if you folks haven't seen Game of Thrones. Okay. So if you folks see this phantom black Volga, I'd certainly do my best to avoid it if possible.
It's God's time.
It's God's time.
Jesus o'clock, motherfucker.
What the fuck? So thank you everyone for joining us for this episode of the Scaryish podcast. We hope you folks enjoyed it. If you would like to support this show, how can people do that?
You're asking me?
Yes.
You can go to patreon.com/Scaryish podcast. Sign up for any of the tiers. They are monthly donations. There is as little as $1, otherwise known as 4 quarters, and they go up in incremental amounts, and each time they go up, you get a new reward, basically, or award. I don't know what it would be called.
It's a reward.
It's a reward. But the $1 tier gets you early access and ad-free access to all of our content that gets released, so that's pretty awesome. Check out the other tiers as well. Robin designs a ton of merch for this show, and the $10 month will get you access to the Badge of Honor tier, where you can receive a bunch of different things. And we have a lot of patrons out there who always post stuff on social media and let us know that they got it and how excited they are. And you could be one of those folks as well. So please head on over there. If you're not down for the monthly donation thing, we totally understand it as well. If you want to do a one-time donation, just be like, hey, I got like $1 I want to give you. You can go over to Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/Scaryish podcast and do a one-time donation there. And we get a lot of those as well. I say a lot. We've gotten a lot in the past. Not like people are raining fucking money on us. We're not Pokimane. Like, hey guys, stop giving us money.
Oh my God.
It blew me away when she did that. But we do appreciate all donations given to us because they go to helping us upgrade our studio setup, which we sincerely appreciate. Robin, for folks who have a story that they'd like to send to us, whether it's being chased by a car, or Cold War stuff, or whatever the case may be, where can they send them?
You can email us at storytime@scaryish.com, or you can go to our website, scaryish.com. There's a contact us page. You just fill out all that fun stuff, and it emails it to us that way. And hopefully you send it to us because we love reading those stories.
Or you can hit us up on any of our social medias. Twitter is @ScarishPod, Instagram is @ScarishPodcast, and Facebook is facebook.com/ScarishPodcast. So we hope to hear from you. This is the end of episode 152. So Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.